the early 1970s, a quiet city in upstate New York became the hunting ground for one of the most chilling and puzzling serial killers in American criminal history. Rochester, New York, a place known for its industrial roots and tight knit communities, was shaken to its core when young girls began disappearing and turning up dead under circumstances that defied easy explanation. The killer left behind a pattern so deliberate, so calculated, that investigators would spend decades trying to decode it. Three young girls, all between the ages of 10 and 11, all with the same haunting detail connecting them. Their first and last names began with the same letter of the alphabet. Carmen Colon, Wanda Walkovich, and Michelle Menza, three victims, three matching initials, one killer who was never brought to justice. The first victim, Carmen Colon, was just 10 years old when she disappeared in November of 1971. Her body was discovered on a rural road in Churchville, New York, just outside Rochester. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled. Witnesses reported seeing a young girl matching her description struggling to escape from a vehicle on a nearby highway, but no one intervened in time. The image of that little girl, reaching out for help, unseen and unheard, became one of the most haunting details of the entire case. Investigators worked tirelessly, but no arrest was made. The case went cold, and the community held its breath, hoping it was an isolated tragedy. 14 months after Carmen's death, the fear that had slowly begun to fade was reignited with devastating force. In April of 1973, 11-year-old Wanda Walkovich vanished after being sent to a local store to pick up groceries for her family. Her body was found the following day in a wooded area in Webster, New York. Like Carmen, she had been sexually assaulted and strangled. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Both girls were young, both were from the Rochester area, both had been abducted in broad daylight, and both shared that eerie alphabetical coincidence in their names. Law enforcement began to suspect they were dealing with a serial killer, someone methodical and deliberate who was selecting victims based on a very specific and disturbing criteria. Then, just months later, in November of 1973, the third victim appeared. Michelle Menza, also 11 years old, was reported missing and found dead in Macedon, New York. She too had been sexually assaulted and strangled. The pattern was now undeniable. Three girls, three sets of matching initials, three murders within a span of roughly 2 years. The press quickly gave the unknown perpetrator a name that would stick: the Alphabet Killer. Some also referred to the crimes as the double initial murders, a label that more precisely described the chilling signature the killer seemed to be leaving behind. Whether this alphabetical pattern was intentional on the killer's part or simply a horrifying coincidence became one of the central debates of the investigation. The Rochester Police Department launched one of the most intensive investigations in the city's history. Hundreds of suspects were interviewed. Tips poured in from across the region. Investigators examined the possibility that the killer had intimate knowledge of the local geography, given that each body was found in a different town but all within a relatively close radius of Rochester. The locations where the bodies were discovered also shared something notable. Each town's name began with the same letter as the victim's initials. Carmen Colon was found in Churchville. Wanda Walkovich was found in Webster. Michelle Menza was found in Macedon. This detail added another layer of calculated precision to the crimes that deeply unsettled investigators and profilers alike. One of the most prominent suspects in the case was a man named Kenneth Bianchi, who would later become infamous as one of the hillside stranglers responsible for a series of murders in California. Bianchi had lived in Rochester during the time of the Alphabet murders and was investigated as a potential suspect. However, investigators were never able to conclusively link him to the crimes, and he was ultimately not charged in connection with the Rochester murders. Over the years, other suspects emerged and were investigated, but each lead eventually ran dry. The case remained frustratingly open, a wound that never fully healed for the families of the victims and for the Rochester community. Decades passed, and the Alphabet murders faded from the front pages, but they were never forgotten by the investigators who had worked the case or by the families who had lost their daughters. In the 2000s, advances in forensic technology breathed new life into the investigation. Deoxyribonucleic acid evidence collected from the crime scenes was reanalyzed using modern techniques that simply had not existed in the 1970s. In 2007, the Monroe County District Attorney's Office announced that a male deoxyribonucleic acid profile had been developed from evidence connected to at least one of the murders. This was a significant breakthrough, offering the possibility that the killer could one day be identified if a matching profile was found in criminal databases. Law enforcement uploaded the profile to the combined deoxyribonucleic acid index system, the national database that stores genetic profiles from convicted offenders and crime scenes. Despite this advancement, no match was found. The killer, if still alive, had either never been convicted of another crime that required deoxyribonucleic acid collection, or had managed to remain entirely off the radar of law enforcement for decades. The case continued to attract attention from true crime researchers, journalists, and amateur investigators who believed that with enough scrutiny, the identity of the killer could still be uncovered. What makes the Alphabet murders so persistently haunting is not just the brutality of the crimes or the youth of the victims, but the combination of factors that have kept the case unsolved for more than 50 years. The killer demonstrated an unusual level of organization and control. The abductions occurred in populated areas, yet witnesses who saw the victims were unable to provide descriptions detailed enough to lead to an arrest. The geographic spread of the body disposal sites suggests someone with local knowledge and the ability to move through the region without drawing attention. The alphabetical pattern, whether intentional or coincidental, added a layer of mystery that has fueled speculation and debate ever since. The families of Carmen Colon, Wanda Wolkowicz, and Michelle Menza have lived with unanswered questions for their entire lives. Justice has never arrived for these three little girls, and the passage of time makes it increasingly unlikely that a prosecution will ever take place, even if the killer is one day identified. The Alphabet murders stand as a sobering reminder of the limits of investigative tools in an era before modern forensics, and of how quickly a killer can vanish into the fabric of ordinary life. Somewhere, the truth about what happened to those three girls exists. It lives in the memory of whoever committed these crimes, in evidence perhaps not yet discovered, or in a deoxyribonucleic acid profile waiting for its match. Until that day comes, the case remains one of America's most enduring and heartbreaking unsolved mysteries.